Hello and welcome to your grammar practice. Today we're going to work on time qualifier sentences. Before we do that, let's review our subject pronouns. Subject pronouns take the place of a noun. I, you, he, she, it, we, they. I represents yourself. For example, I am Miss Erica, so Miss Erica is talking to you. I am talking to you. You is a person or people spoken to. Okay? You are James, Sunny, Lee, Candy, Stephen, Zeno are listening to me. You are listening to me. He takes the place of a male, a boy. So, for example, James is a boy, so James is smart. He is smart. She represents a female, a girl. So, for example, Candy. Candy is pretty. She is pretty. It represents a thing, a place, or an idea, not a person. So, the book is blue. It is blue. Subyon Elementary School is next to my house. It is next to my house. Love is beautiful. It is beautiful. We represents you and I, or a person and I, or a group and I. You and I are studying. We are studying. James and I went to the park. We went to the park. My class and I went to Wubangland. We went to Wubangland. They represents two or more people, not including yourself, or two or more things. Lee, Sunny, and James gave me a birthday party. They gave me a birthday party. The DVDs are on the shelf. They are on the shelf. Now let's review our silly chant. Repeat after me. I, you, he, she, it, we, they. Subject pronouns. Subject pronouns. Hip hip hooray. Let's do it. 1, 2. You know what to do. I, you, he, she, it, we, they. Subject pronouns. Subject pronouns. Hip hip hooray. Again. I, you, he, she, it, we, they. Subject pronouns, hip hip hooray. Now these subject pronouns will help us with our time qualifier sentences. Our time qualifiers are always, usually, sometimes, and never. They go right after the subject pronoun. So let's learn our time qualifiers song. Repeat after me. I always do something. You usually do something. He sometimes does something. She never does mama. It always does something. We usually do something. They sometimes do something. Very good. Now notice that the do is conjugated. So I do, you do, he, she, it does. Remember he, she, it, mama must. So he, she, it does. We do, they do. Now let's sing our song. 1, 2. You know what to do. I always do something. You usually do something. He sometimes does something. She never does mama. It always does something. We usually do something. They sometimes do something. All right, that is your song to help you to remember the time qualifier sentences. Let's practice. How often do you wash the dishes? How often do you take out the trash? How often do you walk the dog? How often do you study? How often do you do homework? How often do you play basketball? How often do you play volleyball? How often do you play soccer? How often do you feed the dog? How often do you vacuum the floor? How often do you vacuum the carpet? How often do you steam the floor? How often do you dust the furniture? How often do you sweep the floor? How often do you set the table? How often do you practice the piano? How often do you play baseball? How often do you babysit? How often do you watch a movie? How often do you go outside and play? How often do you play outside? How often do you go to the playground? Wow, good job. Keep practicing.